There he goes. Okay. I wish that would go away by itself. Okay. You should be able to reprogram that.
If I worked
Uh,
for Zoom,
well, my wife, no more than my mouse is not working because it's upside down. Okay. Although he pays him, he's not forgiven for it until he seeks forgiveness from him, as it is said, but now return the wife. Now, from where do we know that the one who forgives should not be cruel? It is said, and Avram prayed to God, and God healed Avimelech. If one says, blind my eye, cut off my hand, break my leg, he is liable. On condition to be exempt, he is liable. Tear my clothes or break my jug, he is liable. On condition to be exempt, he is exempt. Do this to so and so on condition that you be exempt, he is liable whether it is against his body or against his property. If one steals wood and makes it into utensils for wool, that's wrong. If one steals wood and makes it into utensils, or wool and makes it into garments, he pays as if the time of the robbery. If one steals a pregnant cow and it calves, or ewe bearing wool, and he shears it, he pays the value of the cow ready to calve, or the value of the ewe ready to be shorn. If one steals a cow and it becomes impregnated while with him, and it calves for or a ewe, and it becomes laden with wool while with him, and he shears it, he pays as if the time of the robbery. This is the general rule. All robbers pay as of the time of the robbery. If one steals an animal and it ages or slaves and they age, he pays as at the time of the robbery. Remeah says in the case of slaves, he may say to him, here is your property before you. If he steals a coin and it cracks, fruit and it rots, or wine and it sours, he pays as the time of the robbery. If he steals a coin and it becomes disqualified, truma and it becomes ritually contaminated, chametz and it is in his possession on Pesach, or an animal and it is used for transgression, or becomes disqualified for the altar, or is condemned to be stoned, he may say to him, here is your property before you.
right? Okay. So Mishnah Gimel, Nasan Lumanim Lesakin. So he gave an object to somebody to repair, to a handyman, the kilkalu, and he broke it. He broke it further. Chayavin l'shalem. So the handyman is chayav for the damage that he did. Nasan lecharash shida teva migdal lesaken. He gave him a chest or a box or a cupboard or something um, to fix it, and he broke it. He's chayav to pay. Now this by the way, the Gemara explains that this Mishnah is coming to teach us not just about where you gave something to an uman and he to fix and he broke it, but even if you gave him the parts and said, "Can you assemble this for me?" and he assembled it, and then having assembled it, he then broke it. Okay, the craftsman is liable for the completed item. This is the interesting thing. Even though you gave him the just the raw materials, he's not having an intention to be corner. He's not a gazlan chas v'shalom. He's just a repairman. So when he builds it, he's building it for you. He's just being your shaliach to build the object. And then he slips and falls off the ladder and breaks it. Now he's chayav for the full thing that he broke, because it was a full cupboard that he broke. Okay. Habana shekibel a lovely store is a kosel. So now a builder has received a job to demolish a wall, but they wanted him to demolish it so that they can reuse the materials. Or shehizik. And instead of dismantling the wall, he broke the stones, so they're not usable again, or he did some other form of damage that you can't reuse the materials. Chayav l'shalem. So he is again liable for what he does. I mean, this is all obviously in the absence of an actual contract, because if they could contract before that he's pater from damages while he's doing it. But this is just telling you the stam halacha if they didn't say anything about it. However, if he's banging the wall from one side, and somewhere else somewhere else a rock fell out and broke, that he's part of from. But if it was because of the blow of his hammer that something else fell out, that means he wasn't being careful enough to keep the materials breaking, and he'd be high for that. No, in Tsemer Latzaba, he gives wool to a dyer. Vehik dicha to Yora, and he burned the wool in the pot. No, so he must pay for the value of the wool. But what happens if Tzavao Kaor, he did a lousy job? Okay, so it's all patchy and it's it's an inferior color, but nonetheless it's better than what it was. So it was undyed wool. Now it's dyed just badly, but it's still better than what it was. So if the improvement to the wool is more than what he spent on improving the wool, no saying then he must pay. They can just pay him for the expenses. But if the expenses are more than the benefit, then he just has to pay for the benefit. In other words, he pays the lesser of the two. And what's not explicitly mentioned in the Mishnah is what about the sum that he was contracted to pay? What if he was contracted to pay just a very small amount, at even less than the expenses or the eventual benefit? Then he just has to pay what the amount that they originally contracted on. So the upper hand is in the consumer. He pays the lesser of three things: either what he originally contracted to pay, or the expenses, or the actual benefit. Litzboa lo adom utzva shachor. He asked him to dye it red, and he dyed it black. Shachor utzva adom, or he did it the other way around. So now we have a machlokes between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Meir Omer, nosin lo demeit samro. He says you give him the value of the original wool that he gave. Now, what does this sound like? This sounds like a gazlan. That sounds like the thief,
right?
Who stole something and then made a shinoi, so he doesn't have to return the original item. He just has to return the value of the item at the time that he stole it. So if he basically changed his directive, he was supposed to give he was supposed to dye it red and dye it black, and therefore now he's become like a thief, says Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, אם השבח יוצר על היציאה, נושא לא עשה יציאה, ואם היציאה יוצר על השבח, נושא לא עשה שבח. And Rabbi Yehuda says, no, he's not a thief. He never intended to acquire it. He just botched the job. So it falls into the category of what happened in the first part of the Mishnah. You say, okay, how much is the improvement? Then pay him for the improvement. And if you don't, and if the expenses, then pay him for the expenses. And so it's not. So he didn't make a kinyan on it in order to steal it. He just messed up the job. And the halacha follows Rabbi Yehuda. Mishna hey, hagozel is chavero shave pruta v'nishpalo. Okay, so here we have a din which we encountered also in Shavuos, in the Maseches Shavuos. Actually, last time we did Chazar, because Shavuos is in our side, it actually follows all the Bavas over here. But because we're in a situation where somebody owed somebody something else, and he took a shvur that he didn't, either that he had lost, that he found it in a Veda, and he swore that he didn't have it, or he had a pikadon and he swore he didn't have it, or there was an amount owing. There was a loan, and he swore that there was no amount owing, and now he has charata and he wants to do teshuvah. So not only does he have to pay back obviously what he owed, but he also has to add a chomesh, fifth, an added fifth. And he also has to bring a korban asham. Right? So there's an asham for a what's it, a shvua sheker. There's a special word for this shvua. It's a shvua pikadon. Can't remember exactly what the correct technical term is for it, but at any rate, so he's got there's the keren that he's got to pay back for sure. There's the chomesh, the extra fifth, and there's also the asham. Okay. Now, hagotel is chavero shave pruta. If the basic amount is more than a pruta, the nishpar lo, and he says, I never stole it from you. Now he wants to do teshuvah, and the guy who he owes the money to has moved to Fiji. He says you got to chase after him even if you have to go to Madai, Media, or some island in the middle of the Pacific. Okay. Lo yitain lo livno velo lishlucho aval nosein l'shaliach based in. He cannot just say, okay, oh, will you give this to your father when you see him next, please? He has an obligation to return it to that person, unless of course there's an agreement. Somehow he gets a message and the guy says, okay, when you return it to my son, and then he's appointed a shaliach. But the gazlan cannot appoint a shaliach of his own, right? But what he can do, if he is truly up a creek and has no way of getting it back, is he can go to Beis Din and he can say, look, I stole from whatever from Plony and I want to repay, and I swore about it and I want to repay. Yeah, please take this money as Beis Din and accept it on his behalf. So that he does have an option, right? Let's see if there's any other note over here. So that's if he wants to have a kapara for this. The mace, and if the person that he stole from has died, yachzir liyorshav, then he has to return it to the yorshav for the same dinim. By the way, we saw this just to remind you of the dinim that we saw in. Oh, actually, we're going to see this in the coming Mishnah. So I was going to say a couple of things about this, but that I thought we learned in Shavuos, but apparently it's here in Bava Kamma. So we'll leave that for tomorrow. Okay.
So the court selects a shliach for him to be able to take care of that.
Correct. Okay, let's go back to Hevav.
Excuse me. If a pit belongs to two partners and the first one passes by it and does not cover it, and the second one passes by and does not cover it, the second one is liable. If the first one covers it, the second one comes and finds it uncovered, he does not and does not cover it, the second one is liable. If he covers it properly and a bull or a donkey falls into it and dies, he is exempt. If he does not cover it properly and a bull or a donkey falls into it and dies, he's liable. If it fell backward because of the sound of digging, he is liable. Backward because of the sound of digging, he is exempt. What's it, the difference? If he fell forward, so either way, if he hears the sound of digging, he fall forward or backwards, it doesn't matter. He's exempt. Right. If an ox with his trapping falls into it and they break, or a donkey with his trappings and they tear, he is liable for the animal, but exempt for the trappings. If a bull that was deaf, foolish, or young falls into it, he is liable. A male child or a female child, a male slave or a female slave, he is exempt. A bull and all other animals are alike as regards falling into a pit, separation from Mount Sinai, the twofold payments, returning a loss, unloading, muzzling, Kalayim, and the Shabbos. The same applies to wild beast and fowl. If so, why is an ox or donkey stated? Because scripture speaks of the usual. And if he leaves it in the sun or gives it over to a deaf, mute, or mentally deranged person or a minor, and he goes out and damages, he's liable. If he gives it over to a shepherd, the shepherd assumes the responsibility in his stead. If it falls into a garden and derives benefit, its owner pays for what was benefited. Should it go down in its usual manner and damage, he pays for what is damaged. How does he pay for what is damaged? We appraise how much a saw's space in that field was worth and how much it is worth.
Hold on. I beg your pardon. I lost focus for a second. You've gone on to tomorrow's Chazaras.
Oh, that's okay.
Which the basis for. Yeah.
All right. We have
it's in Teskimel.
The essence of a get is you're permitted to every man. Rabbi Yehuda says, and this which shall be to you from me is a writ of divorce, a letter of abandonment, and a bill of release to go to be married to any man that you want. The essence of a document of emancipation is you are a free woman, or you are to yourself. 3 gittin avoid, but if she married, the offspring is legitimate. If she wrote it with his handwriting, but there are no witnesses on it, if there are witnesses on it and he has no date, if it has a date but only one witness, these 3 gittin avoid. But if she married, the offspring is legitimate. If Elazar says, although there are no witnesses on it, but he gave it to her in the presence of witnesses, it's valid. And one collects for mortgage properties because witnesses sign on a document only for the sake of the general good. Okay.
Mm.
I'm just reading something ahead. All right,
Mm-hmm.
there's one more. All right, one more. Yes.
Yeah.
If two men send two identical gittin and they became mixed up, he gives both of them to this one and both of them to this one. Therefore, if he lost one of them, the second is void. If five wrote as a group in a get, so and so is divorcing, so and so is divorcing, so and the witnesses are below, they're all valid, and it shall be given to each one. If the text was written for each one and the witnesses are below, that which with the witnesses are read is valid. Okay.
Right. Nadarim Gimel Vav.
Yeah, well, on Sukkot night, we were talking about something about, I was talking about my Mishnah, so I was talking about the Gittin and all that, and then we're doing over the part where, if he throws it to her and she goes closer to him. Well, my 20-year-old is sitting there saying, "What are you talking about? You don't throw these things like that. He has to give it to her." I said, "Well, but it's an example. They're just making up." And then my son-in-law chimed in and said,
Happened.
"You
If it
understand,
happened.
if it happened, or she was on the roof."
The answer to these kashas is you're right. That's not the correct way to do it. But what can we do? This idiot did it this way and this happened. Now what?
Yeah, and I said, and she was on the roof. Well, what was she doing on the roof? Well, she was on the roof, and he threw it up there, but it was in the airspace. She didn't want to hear all this. She didn't want to,
Mm.
I shouldn't have said anything. I would have been better off. One who makes a net of prohibiting seafarers is permitted to benefit from land dwellers. If land dwellers, he is forbidden to benefit from seafarers, because seafarers are included in land dwellers, not like those who go from Accra to Jaffa, but from someone whose custom is to voyage. But he is permitted to benefit from women. I'm sorry, that's wrong. One who makes a neder prohibiting those who see the sun is forbidden to benefit even from the blind, for he referred only to those visible to the sun. One who makes a neder prohibiting dark-headed people is forbidden to benefit from bald people and from hoary-haired people, but he is permitted to benefit from women and children, since only adult men are called dark-headed.
Mm-hmm.
It's never called dark-headed. Okay.
Yep, you're dark-headed.
Dark-headed, right? Yeah. Um, excuse me, Yudalid. A ledge which is in front of a window, one may put onto it and take from it on Shabbos. A person may stand in a private domain and move objects in a public domain, or in a public domain and move objects in a private domain, provided he does not take them beyond 4 hours. A person may not stand in a private domain and urinate into a public domain, or in a public domain and urinate into a private domain. Similarly, he may not expectorate. If Yehuda says, even when one's saliva has become detached in his mouth, he may not walk 4 amas until he expectorates. A person may not stand in a private domain and drink in a public domain, or in a public domain and drink in a private domain, unless he brings his head and most of his body into the domain in which he drinks, similarly regarding a wine pit. And a person may catch water from a gutter lower than 10 tefachim, but from a pipe he may drink in any manner.
Right.
All right. We were talking one time, we got back and forth between the classes when Mr. Berkeley about expectorating, spitting in shul, and how they had all these spittoons all around the shul years ago, and we were saying, can you imagine, in shul, that people just have these spittoons around and going around spitting, and it was
the whole spitting thing really grosses me out. But
I know.
What was one of these crazy stories? Not a crazy story, but I mean, when I was fresh bal tshuva, I once went to daven in the Chabad shul down the road from my parents' house. The Rosh Hashiva, it was a Chabad yeshiva. The Rosh Hashiva, Rav Levi Weinberg, is incredible Talmid Chochem. He have you seen the English translation of Lessons in Tanya?
No, I haven't seen it.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, he translated it. That's his work over there. But he's an incredible man. I was actually zocher to have a chavrusa with him once a week in Tanya.
Oh, wow.
Well, chavrusa, I mean, he was teaching me. But whatever so we were davening, and at the end of davening, during Aleinu, I see one of the guys turns around and spits on the floor and rubs it into the floor with his foot. Like, what? I'm like, my head was exploding, and I went to I went up to Rabbi Weinberg subsequently. I don't remember how close, and I asked him like because I saw a couple of people who was like, "Is this normal for people to be spitting in shul?" So he explained to me that the minhag of some Hasidim is when they say "Shehem mishtachlim lahevel barik," they spit in as a thing of to show their disgust for avodah zarah and whatever
Right.
else. They spit on the floor
Wow.
and then cover it up, and I said, okay. uh,
Wow.
one of those customs I wish they would discourage, but whatever, that's their business.
Yes. How
I,
long ago was that?
I've actually never seen it since then. That was the only place that I saw it was in. And what was I mean, you'd think in South Africa, like the place where they've got manners and refinements and whatever. This is like, yeah,
They do have refinements and manners in South Africa. They really do. It's a special place like that.
very much. It's a very Letvisher
Really?
community. The Litvishers
I
were
didn't know
very, very big on derech eretz. It was like that was the most important thing was your midas, your derech eretz is like okay, you can be a bit of an amaretz. You don't have to be a talmid chacham and whatever, but even I mean people who were they came to South Africa and they started dropping Shabbos and whatever to make a living, but they were
that.
all fiercely traditional and Derek Eretz was like the biggest thing I would say that characterizes South African Jews is that hakpada that you got to be a mensch. You just absolutely got to be a mensch. You can drive to and they'll drive to an Orthodox shul on Shabbos.
And
That's
that was non-Jews also have that Derek Eretz in some ways, or
no. It's a Litvisher thing. It's from the. It's just that Litvisher idea. It's not a. I mean, South Africans are, I think, culturally actually very nice and friendly.
right, right, they are. They
Yeah,
are. It's interesting.
that's
Wow.
when they're not sticking a gun in your face and taking your wallet. But
Oh, I thought they were okay. All right. Dollar dollar. A woman who bleeds in labor is considered a nida. If a woman is bleeding in labor for 3 days within her 11 days of potential ziva, and she had relief for 24 hours and then gave birth, she is deemed to be one who has given birth in a state of ziva. These are the words of Reb Eliezer. When Jewish says, a night and a day like the night of the Sabbath is in its day. This means that she has relief from the pain, but not from the flow of blood. How long can a woman's labor last? Reb Meir says even 40 or 50 days. Reb Yehuda says her month of childbirth is sufficient for her, and Reb Yossi and Reb Shimon say there is no labor for more than 2 weeks. Concerning a woman who bleeds in labor within 80 days of a female birth, any blood that she discharges is tahor until the child is born. But Reb Eliezer declares it tameh. Okay, let me change the page here. Okay. They say to Reb Eliezer, even in a case where the Torah was stringent regarding blood discharge during a period of relief, it was lenient regarding the blood of discharge in labor. Then, in a case where the Torah was lenient regarding blood discharge from a period of relief, is it not logical that we must be lenient regarding the blood discharge in labor? Reb Eliezer replied, it is sufficient for the derived law to be the same as the source law. From what tumah did the Torah spare her? It is from the tumah of a ziva, but is she a tameh as a nida?
okay.
Okay, and Soros. Zion. If two ewes which had not previously given birth bore two males, he gives them both to a Kohen. If they bore a male and a female, the male belongs to a Kohen. If they bore two males and a female, one belongs to him and one belongs to a Kohen. Rav Tarfon says the Kohen selects the better one for himself. And Rav Akiva says the fatter one is an issue between them, while the second lamb is left to pasture until it develops a blemish. And it is subject to the law of gifts to the Kohen. Rav Yossi exempts it. If one of them died, Rav Tarfon says they divide. Rav Akiva says the burden of proof lies on the one who seeks to exact something from the other. If they bore two females and a male, or two males and two females, there is nothing here for a Kohen. With one which had previously given birth and one which had not previously given birth, now bore two males, one belongs to him and one goes to the Kohen. Reb Tarfon says the Kohen selects the better one for himself, and Reb Akiva says the fatter one is at issue between them, while the second lamb is left to pasture until it develops a blemish, and it is subject to the law of gifts to the Kohen. Reb Yossi exempts it. For Rabbi Yossi was one to say, whatever has its substitute in the Kohen's hand is exempt from the law of gifts to the Kohen. Rabbi Meir rules it's subject to the gifts. If one of them died, Rabbi Torfin says they divide it. Rabbi Akiva says the burden of proof lies on the one who seeks to exact something from the other. If they bore a male and a female, there is nothing here for a Kohen. An animal born by there's one more, right? An animal born by cesarean section and the one that follows it, Reb Tarfon says both must be left to pasture until they develop blemishes, and they may be eaten with their blemish by their owner. Rabbi Akiva says neither one is a Bechor, and the first because it did not open the womb, and the second because it was preceded by another.
Yeah. Okay.
I saw your son going to shul this morning.
Yeah.